Howdy friends, my name's Jen. Welcome back to Altruistic Farmstead, where we use our garden for good. The topic for today is cucumbers. There are going to be 5 different parts to this video. First off, we're going to talk about facts pertaining to cucumbers. Then we're going to talk about how to grow cucumbers, the pests that affect cucumbers, as well as companion plants that can help deter those pests. We are also going to talk about how to harvest cucumbers and how to preserve your harvest. The first thing you need to know about cucumbers is there's 2 main types of cucumbers. There's slicing cucumbers and there's pickling cucumbers. This plant right here is pickling cucumbers, although I am growing slicing cucumbers in my garden as well. Cucumbers are made up of 95% water. They can actually help keep you hydrated when you eat a lot of them. Cucumbers contain a lot of essential nutrients and vitamins, such as a wide range of B vitamins, potassium, magnesium. They also have fiber, vitamin C, and vitamin K. Good morning. Jenkins, you are just the cutest. Have you ever wondered why people put slices of cucumbers on their eyes? Well, it turns out cucumbers are actually, Cucumbers are actually very good for your skin. Cucumbers are actually really good at reducing inflammation, which works when you have bags under your eyes. But you can also cut it into slices and use it on a sunburn, and it will reduce the inflammation and the pain of the sunburn. Now, cucumbers, much like squash, have male and female flowers. So this is obviously a female flower because you can see the fruit that's behind the flower. This right here is a male flower because there's very obviously not a fruit growing behind it. Y'all, this cat just won't leave me alone this morning. What do you want, Binks? You're not a parrot. Okay, on to the next subject. Let's talk about how to grow cucumbers. I like to succession plant my cucumbers. I'm going to show you how I start cucumber from seed. So I'm going to start these Market More cucumbers that I got from MI Gardener. I've got some good moist organic potting soil here that I'm going to be planting in. I'm just going to take a few seeds. This year I did a plant sale, so I started a lot of seeds this year. I'm talking a few thousand seeds probably. So something that I learned is when you're starting seeds, it's easier to separate them when they get big if you plant them far apart. So I'm just going to set that one in there. I'm going to put 4 seeds in this pot. I'm not going to let them get very big, but as you can see, I'm typically, I would just dig a hole in the middle and put all the seeds in the same hole and then bury it. But when you go to up pot these or separate them to plant them outside, it's just extremely difficult, and you damage the plant when you're pulling those roots apart. So by planting them far apart like this in this pot, the roots don't get bound up as much and they're just easier to separate. So cucumber seeds need to be planted about 1 inch deep. So I'm just going to press those in until, I reach about my first knuckle. And then I'm just going to cover it up. And if my soil wasn't already moist, this is when I would give it a good watering. But it's already moist. So I'm just going to set it in one of these trays that I have with other plants, just a little teeny tiny bit of water in it, so that it always has a constant moisture coming up from below. Now, cucumber seeds need at least 68 degrees to germinate. If I was starting these when it was still cold outside in early spring, then I would definitely put them on a heat mat to speed germination. However, it's almost the middle of June here in Zone 7 in Oklahoma, so it is plenty warm. One great thing about cucumbers is you can grow them in the ground or you can grow them in pots. Either way, it's really important just to keep the soil evenly moist. Once your cucumber plant starts to flower, it's important to feed it regularly with a potassium-rich fertilizer. So cucumbers require rich, fertile, well-draining soil. Cucumbers are really sensitive to the cold, so make sure you don't put your cucumbers outside until the nighttime temperature doesn't drop below 50 degrees. You're definitely going to want a lot of mulch at the base of your cucumber plant because they are 95% water. You don't want any of that available water to be evaporated from the soil any faster than necessary. Uneven watering or uneven soil moisture can lead to bitter fruit. So as you can see, we've chose the trellising method to grow cucumbers, and I'm going to take a couple minutes to show you guys how to prune cucumbers. I planted this plant here a few weeks ago, and it's just kind of taken over. My main goal is to grow this plant up and over the trellis. I don't want any of these leaves laying on the ground. Leaves that are touching the ground are more susceptible to mold, disease, and pest damage. So I want to get all of those leaves cleaned up and train it to go up this trellis. Another thing is any fruit that's laying on the ground is going to be susceptible to ants and other creepy crawlies that want to eat all of your fruit. This right here is our main stalk for our cucumber plant. Here's a flower, here's a tendril, here's the main leaf, and then here is a sucker. And as you can see, this sucker is already producing fruit, which tells me that the plant is putting all of its energy into growing more suckers than it is into growing one main vine that's going to put off some good healthy fruit. So it kills me to do it because, you know, there's already a little tiny cucumber on there. But I'm just going to take this off. And I'm going to get rid of that. Ouch. This happens. You see how this cucumber kind of turned yellow and it looks like it's about to fall off? That's because that flower wasn't pollinated. I'm also going to be cutting away any leaves that look diseased or yellowing. Oh gosh, I don't even know where to start. I don't know why I let this get this bad. Cucumbers are a pretty fast growing vegetable, so they grow big, they grow fast, they put off a lot of fruit, and they die off pretty quickly. So I like to practice succession planting, and about every 3 or 4 weeks I start new seeds. And because I live in zone 7, I have a pretty long growing season, so I'm able to grow several different rounds of cucumbers before my first frost. When your cucumbers get kind of old and worn out, they're just weaker and they're tired, and they're more susceptible to pests and disease. The whole point of pruning your cucumbers is to maximize your yield. By pruning your cucumbers, what you're doing is you're increasing the airflow, which is in turn going to reduce your risk of pests and disease and bacterial things like mold and mildew and stuff like that. It's very important to prune your cucumbers to get the maximum amount possible out of each plant. Guys, it's early in the morning. The sun still hasn't even risen fully into the sky, and it's hot out here. I'm sweating. So moving on to the next topic, companion plants and pests. So first let's talk about the pests that affect cucumbers, and then we'll talk about the companion plants that might help deter some of those pests. Cucumber beetles are little green beetles that look like ladybugs, but they're green. Cucumber beetles particularly like new growth, so that could include young plants, but also you'll usually find them munching on the top of the plant where the leaves and the foliage are the freshest. So if you even let one cucumber ripen on the vine and turn yellow, then that basically signals to the plant that it's done producing for the season and it can stop. The whole goal of the plant is to produce seed, right? So if you let it go to seed, essentially, it's going to stop producing because it thinks that it's done for the year. What that also means is any cucumbers that you pull off of that plant after you've even let one single fruit ripen, they will be bitter. And when your cucumbers are bitter, they are much, much more susceptible because they seek out that bitterness. Another pest that really affects cucumbers are aphids. Aphids pretty much affect everything in the garden. Aphids, the biggest problem with aphids is that they transmit disease from plant to plant. These diseases often cause damage to the foliage, like cupping, twisting, and distorted fruit and leaves. Whiteflies are another issue. First off, you'll know if you have whiteflies if you bump up against your plant and you see a poof of white flies flying out. The adults will take off when they're disturbed. However, whiteflies are kind of like little vampires. They suck the sap out of your plant. If you happen to get a whitefly infestation, it can cause stunted plants and reduced yield. The last main pest of cucumbers is thrips, something like that. These little boogers can cause severe damage. So now that we've talked about the bugs, let's talk about a natural way to kind of deter these bugs. So these bugs know what cucumbers smell like, and that's what they're looking for. So some of these companion plants that I'm about to talk about are good at masking the smell of cucumbers, or maybe they're just a pest trap. One of the best companion plants to plant with cucumbers are in the legume family, so beans and peas. Plant them with your cucumbers and your tomatoes and all kinds of other things in your garden because they literally pull nitrogen out of the atmosphere and put it into the soil. Another great companion plant is dill. It attracts pollinators like ladybugs and predatory wasps. Marigolds are a good companion plant because they attract beneficial bugs and they repel aphids. Root crops like carrots or radishes are really good for your cucumbers also. If you have a heavy clay soil like I do and it's just very dense and hard, a good root crop vegetable will really help your cucumbers because it'll help break up that hard, clumpy soil. If you plant chives, not only do they attract beneficial bugs, they also deter the cucumber beetle. Petunias help repel leafhoppers. According to my research, nasturtiums are supposed to be a really good companion plant. Not only are they a beautiful addition to your garden, but they also help improve the growth and flavor of the things that grow around them. Last but not least, growing your cucumbers next to a tall companion plant like okra or corn gives it something to trellis up. Finally, let's talk about how to harvest cucumbers. So it's very important. Pick your cucumbers daily. It's best to pick them in the morning when they have the most moisture. With cucumbers, along with many other types of plants, the more you pick, the more the plant will produce because, as I previously mentioned, the main goal of the plant is to produce seed. And so if you're constantly picking those fruits off, then the plant is going to be constantly trying to produce more fruit to achieve its goal of making seed. The final thing I want to talk to you about is how to preserve your cucumbers. There's a few different ways you can preserve cucumbers. You can pickle them, either with refrigerator pickles that are fresh and crunchy, or you can can your pickles for a long-term shelf-stable solution. You can refrigerate your cucumbers, but you know, they start to lose their flavor and they start to wrinkle a little bit after about 2 weeks. So if you're not going to eat your cucumbers soon, refrigerating may not be the best option. Of course, you can freeze your cucumbers. However, you know, when you thaw them out, they are going to be kind of mushy. So if you're going to freeze your cucumbers, the best way to use those would probably be in a soup or something where they're going to be cooked. Finally, you can freeze dry cucumbers. Slice it in thin slices, put it on the freeze dryer tray, put it in the machine, turn it on, and when it's done, those cucumbers can either be ground into a powder to add to smoothies. You can put them in water. You can rehydrate them and eat them in a salad, or you can just use them as a dry snack or add them to a homemade trail mix. Okay, guys, so today we talked about facts pertaining to cucumbers. We also talked about how to grow cucumbers. We talked about companion plants and pest control. We talked about how to harvest cucumbers, and we talked about how to preserve your harvest. So if you have learned anything from this video today, I would really appreciate it if you'd take the time to hit that like button and subscribe so you don't ever miss any of the videos that we post on this channel. If you'd like to see more of what we do here at Altruistic Farmstead, here's a video and here's a playlist. Thank you so much for hanging out with me in my garden today. I hope you've learned something and have a blessed day.